radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
All right. Welcome, Fade to Black. How you doing? Today is Wednesday, July 2nd, 2025. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Let's do this, man. Yeah, you know the drill. This week on Fade to Black, great week. After being out of the country and taping my TV show for the last 3 weeks, we kicked everything off on Monday with Peru and Bolivia, a recap of my adventures in South America. That's right. Last night, Ron Meyer was with us. Jesus had an NDE. That was a great conversation last night. And tonight, Lance Hightower joins us, Dogman in the USA, cryptids and other fun stuff. Always a great conversation. We're going to do that tonight. Tomorrow night, Eric Wargo is with us. Check this out. Precognition, time travel, and UFOs. They are all connected, but you already knew that. So that's our week here on Fade to Black. Very excited for me to get to this weekend. And I'm not leaving. I'm not flying. I'm not on an airplane. I haven't done this in literally months. And I got back. I just wanted to let everybody know. I flew for 30 hours out of South America, 30 hours. Got back to Los Angeles on Saturday evening. Obviously fell asleep and woke up sometime Sunday, had to turn around and get ready for another week of shows. And what I did in between everything, I you don't do this stuff alone. I have a very cool, dedicated, and large team that supports this show. I have writers, I have producers, I have people that book the show. And with all of that, which means I have a pretty good payroll every month too as well. But what that means is it enabled me to binge Parks and Recreation. That's right. I'm on my 5th binge of Park. And that's all I'm just literally on the couch with the phone turned off, just binging on a show that just makes me laugh and just trying to get my feet back on the ground and just aiming for this weekend where I can just relax, ride my Harley and get my head back together. But thank you to everyone out there. And I truly mean this for not only being here night after night, year after year, but, you know, when I leave for 3 weeks and there's no Fade to Black and everything else, well, yeah, there's that. The other part is I don't have the show either. I don't. I miss it. I miss all of you. And I just couldn't wait to get back and get on the air, which I did somehow on Monday to do that review. But let me tell you something. I was focused on relaxation and sleep during that show, but Parks and Recreation has got me through all of it. And also the guests, like tonight, I have Lance Hightower here and we get to just talk about cryptids and fun stuff all night. And I get to learn something along with all of you. All right. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. Obviously I've had some sleep. My head is now clear. Yeah. All right. I have one event coming up at the end of this month. I will be heading out to the East Coast, hosting the Psy Games, the Psychic Olympics. And this is August 1st through the 3rd, 2025 in Charlottesville, Virginia. The links for that are below. All of the speakers, everything else, schedule. Ticket information and all of that is in the links below in the description over on our website and, of course, throughout social media. And I will see everybody out there in Virginia at the end of this month, August 1st through the 3rd. This is so me. It's so me. I get to be a game show host, which means I just get to go up there and do my thing. Yeah. I've got an outfit all picked out for that, by the way. So I'll see you at the Psychic Olympics in Virginia at the end of this month. Tonight, Lance Hightower is with us. The show is entitled Dogman in the USA, which means we can talk about whatever he wants. Now, he's got Monster 911. He is a podcast host. He has been doing this for a long time. He's an experiencer. He is a researcher. We're going to talk about all of that and cryptids and that reality. We're going to do all of that. His links are below. And of course, the Monster 911 podcast. We've got everything that you need in the links below. And with that, for the first time on Fade to Black, Lance Hightower, and he's right there. Lance, good evening, young man.
Hey, good to be with you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, right on. Now, this is the deal, Lance. All
Okay.
right. You ready?
I'm ready.
From one host to another, right? Okay. Tonight, I'm going to test your chops, by the way. We're going to see. We're going to test your chops. Yeah, we're going to test your chops. But you get the first-time guest disclaimer. Now, you don't get to steal this for your show, by the way.
Okay.
All right. I'll have to invoice you.
Okay.
You get the first-time guest disclaimer, which is this, Lance. Lance, it's just you and I sitting on my couch having a conversation as friends. And where that conversation starts, it starts. Where it ends. But we're going to end as friends. Now, you have to accept so we can move on.
Okay. I agree. I accept.
Oh, that was easy. You had me on the edge of my seat, Lance. That's not what you're supposed to. As a show host, you got to make me comfortable.
Well, I'll try to do that. Absolutely.
Okay,
I've got a lot to share.
Okay. And my job, because you're a host, is to see if I can make you uncomfortable.
Go for it.
All right.
I like that. I like challenges.
Yeah. Let's do it. This is going to be a great conversation tonight. And as you know, and the audience knows, I have done a lot of shows on cryptids. I've got my own belief system in this. I haven't. Okay, let me start off with this. I haven't had a Bigfoot sighting. I haven't had a Dogman sighting. I haven't had a Slenderman sighting. I haven't had a Skinwalkers. I haven't seen evidence of it. But I look forward to the day where I get the crap scared out of me. Okay, but it hasn't happened yet. But I know that there is something going on. And science is starting to, this is something I talk about nearly every night on the show. Science is starting to support science of all things, right? Science is starting to support this reality that you and I have been discussing for so many years. And that's the exciting part. We know that there's something going on, a lot of witnesses and a lot of things to support it, but I haven't enjoyed that yet. I've seen UFOs, man. I've seen, I live in a haunted house, right? So, but I haven't, no, man.
Well,
I haven't had that yet.
That's a really good point. And I think the reason why science is coming around to admit these is after these podcast shows like mine and large ones like yours, is that you have what I like to call this anecdotal pattern evidence. In other words, people that are totally unrelated, different ages, live in different regions, different occupations and careers, report seeing creatures. And by the way, they're really not into this. Most of the first time eyewitness folks, this is the first time they're not into the shows. They really don't read cryptid books, but they know what they saw, and what they saw wasn't human. It wasn't any known indigenous animal that lives in their region or state. And so they want answers. And so that's what they reach out. And so what's really interesting in doing a lot of these, hundreds of these interviews now since 2017, you start to see patterns of when you see a certain creature, you see a pattern of what the creature does. You see weather patterns matter, time of day matter, seasons matter, and you see patterns on how these eyewitnesses respond to what they see, as well as a whole nother pattern of an unknown agency that tends to appear at random times.
And you know what else is interesting? And we've all been through this, but it happens. You can make it happen, which is this. You're sitting at dinner with your grandparents and just bring it up. And then the next thing you know, your grandmother says, yeah, me and your grandfather saw Bigfoot once. Right. And, or, you know, some friend at dinner that never talks about this stuff. They sit back and you hear the wife go, yeah, we were camping once. Bigfoot walked by the tent. It's bizarre. People have their Bigfoot sightings. They don't necessarily talk about it, but it's a bigger community than the UFO community, maybe even than the ghost community. The Bigfoot and cryptid community is huge.
It is. And I think you definitely hit on something that is fascinating to me, and because it revolves around a lot of psychology of people. And when they see something they don't quite understand, it goes against this, what we call this cognitive dissonance, that they can't compare it to anything that they know. So what do? Especially the older generations, they would take secrets to their grave. And nowadays it's, you know, everybody's on a platform, but when you open up that door of just one word, like, I got a question, you know, I think I saw Bigfoot. And then their eyes are as big as saucers. And they go, well, let me tell you what I saw back in 1967.
Right. Okay. I'll tell you, I've told the story many times, but it is hilarious. This is when I got brought down to earth, right? I got slapped. All right. And this is how I got slapped. In the Pacific Northwest, Northern California and above, Bigfoot country, right? Okay. So I go to, has to be one of the biggest Bigfoot gift shops, museums, if you will, up in Northern California. It's ginormous. Hundreds of cars, parking lot kind of thing. And 1,000 Bigfoot statues. I'm not exaggerating, by the way. 1,000 Bigfoot statues. The wind shot things, totem pole, it's just huge, right? I've never seen that many t-shirts. And so I'm in there. I'm hosting coast to coast, right? My ego, right? And I'm walking around there and I go up and I'm waiting to be recognized. Okay. And I'm not digging it. So anyway, I go up to the front counter and I said, nice shop. And this lady goes, yeah. I said, are you the owner? She goes, I am. I said, hi, Jimmy Church, Coast to Coast AM. She goes, what's that? Yeah, right. And I was like, well, okay, let's change the conversation. And I asked for it, right? I did.
Right.
But my point being, the Bigfoot community does their own thing.
Yeah.
The cryptid community does their own thing. Ghosts, the paranormal, the supernatural, life after death, crystals, right? UFOs, conspiracy theory, the coast to coast, that you know, that history channel, travel channel. That's one thing. But the cryptid community runs on its own gas, doesn't it?
It pretty much does. I mean, that's another good point. I mean, it's definitely when we started this podcast, I didn't realize that. We only started it basically to share among my brothers and I, just a platform we could talk. And I never expected it to grow. Honestly, I know that sounds silly. And I got started with a broken cell phone and a $40 Bluetooth speaker. And that's how we started the podcast show. And it
sounds like my start.
Yeah. I mean, and I absolutely had zero knowledge on how to do a podcast show. Absolutely zero. and I just, YouTube University helped me through it. Uh, but yeah, it is a very tight community, and especially when you go to these conferences, it if you don't know folks, you will begin to know people because everybody knows everybody, and it's a very tight group, the conferences especially. And once one person follows you on a podcast show, well, they follow 6, 7, 8, 10 others as well. So everybody knows everybody's name, their own style, kind of what we talked about before the show. And yeah, it's a very eclectically interesting tight group.
Let me ask you a question. This is the elephant in the room question. Why is it that the cryptid community doesn't want to be connected to UFOs, but the UFO community wants to be connected to the cryptid community? They see the connections. Cryptid community, there is no UFO connection in a general sense. Why is that line in the sand there?
Well, I think I've not personally come across a hard drawn line, but I know what you're talking about, because when I go to conferences or I see it in the comments, it's like there's certain very heavily debated things within the cryptid community. That is one of them. Because I think one of the things, and again, I don't speak for everybody, but I'm just kind of, in looking at the comments, you have this creature that looks very primitive, Sasquatch. Hair, large, abilities, supernatural abilities, all this, very, very primitive looking. And then to associate or a UFO, which is, we think of maybe technology, it's hard to kind of bridge that gap. But with that being said, there's a lot of people that I've spoken to and I've interviewed that have seen, in fact, the last show I just did, I mean, a UFO was spotted, a sphere, and this was back in 86. And then a day or two later, this creature was seen. So it's really, you see this association over and over and over. And there's other things within the cryptid community, like, does the prints, do they have a metatarsal arch, or do they not? Do they disappear at will, or do they just kind of blend into the trees to look like they disappear? And a lot of them are pretty heavily contentious subjects. I mean, when you get into there, people are very staunch, very, they won't deviate from their belief, whatever that is within that community. So, I mean, you bring up a good point. I'll just say this. I see, or I hear a lot of people stating that they've seen numerous UFOs, spheres, things like that, and shortly prior to, during, or after, they'll have a creature encounter. That's happened many times of the people I've interviewed. So,
but yet they enter in denial.
They do, and everybody has this level of absolute.
They forget about Chewbacca. Right? I mean, you know what I mean?
No, that's a good point.
Yeah. I mean, there's, but okay. So then here's the other thing, and let's get straight into Dogman and who Dogman is. But when you look at petroglyphs, certainly the stories and things that have been handed down for millennia. We see it in artwork. Every culture in the world has got a cryptid in their mythology, which I think is always based on reality. But this isn't a modern phenomenon, is it? This is as ancient as anything else.
Yeah, and that's, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's another contentious point that a lot of people bring up. I have a very close friend that swears up and down that this, for instance, this Dogman creature is lab made. It's designed. Right. Yes. And whereas I'm not necessarily 100% leaning on that, I'm more of the, I guess you could say, belief that it has been around a lot longer than what we think here, but that there have and are people behind the scenes that are maybe not in direct line with a government agency, but more of an NGO, corporate, that have studied these creatures. They're well aware of these creatures, their abilities, and they're Johnny on the spot. And there might be a level of intervention into some of their makeup, if you will. So I'm more along the lines they've been here a long time rather than they're just totally 100% design made in a lab.
It could be both. Could be
Yes.
both.
Yes.
I had a guest on the show a couple of months ago that revealed to me for the first time, I'd never heard about this, but up in the Columbia River Basin, right, up in Washington State, there, which, as we know, right, one of the highest sighting rates of Bigfoot in the world is up there. Well, along the Columbia River Basin on the river was the largest Department of Defense animal experimenting laboratory in the country that was built during and ran after World War II. Genetic testing, genetic experiments right there. And then, and so one of the things that he suggested was Bigfoot escaped. Right. And now, and there were reports of that, by the way, of animals escaping from this facility.
I believe it.
I went and researched the facility, looked at the historic pictures of it, and it was huge and it was real. Now, does that explain everything? No, but it reveals the possibility of something like that happening in addition to the other creatures that just may be here in species that were here naturally.
Oh, I 100% agree on that. I think that these creatures have been very well studied, and they there was a gentleman that I know very well who shot one of these creatures and was later in another state. He's a truck driver. He was pulled over by two unknown men dressed alike, very large guys.
Wait. Pump the brakes. What do you mean shot? What did he shoot?
Well, it's well known now. I interviewed him maybe about 4 years ago. Okay. He's a truck driver. He had some air brakes break down in Michigan. Now, I don't know exactly where in Michigan, but I know it was in Michigan. And I was contacted by his sister, and it was a very kind of benign call. The sister said, "Hey, Lance," and I had the same toll-free number I've had since 2017. She calls the number and says, "You need to talk to my brother. He needs to talk to someone." So okay. So I call her and she said, yeah, this is my number, but you need to call his number. So I called his number, and very soft-spoken guy. And I bet we talked for 2 days. He interviewed me. And I'm like, I wasn't quite sure what was going on, but I think he was just feeling me out if I was for real, if I was going to make, if I was going to embarrass him, ridicule him, kind of where my standpoint was. And then after he kind of realized that I was for real, I wanted to know what happened, he opened up on like day 3, very soft spoken, but basically this is what he said. After having the air brakes break down in Michigan in an evening, it was in the summertime, he basically saw something in the woods that was black. He thought it was a bear. He kind of shooed it away very loud. He was putting his tools away. He got in the cab, and he was coming out of this park bottom, and he was going up this hill by himself. Really beautiful, cool evening. The windows were down. He didn't have the AC on. He just wanted to enjoy the summer evening Michigan air. As he was shifting going uphill, for a semi-truck, it's slow. Shift, slow until he was getting up the hill. And something caught his eye on his right periphery. And as he turned to look, he saw the massive head of a canine bent down inside the window of the passenger side of his semi-truck.
Whoa.
Not regular truck, semi-truck.
Gotcha.
It freaked him out. He's shifting gears, trying to watch the road, and is just frantically looking at this thing to his right. It's ducking its head in, looking around the cab, sticking its head out, running next beside, sticking its head in, wildly kind of perusing the inside of the cab and sticking its head back out. Well, he didn't know what was going on. He is a very avid, let's just say he likes to shoot pew-pews. And so he's very avid marksman. Instinctively, he pulls a firearm, draws it, and as this thing is looking forward and it's coming back to stick its head back in, he fires, hits it twice, and he knows he kills it. He looks in the side mirror and it rolls. He said, and I quote, it was the size of a horse, Lance. I knew I had mortally wounded it. It rolled multiple times on the side. He's still in shock. He gets to the top of the hill and he said, I got to turn around. I got to make sure this thing is like done. So he whips a U-E, goes back downhill, and he doesn't see it. But there's a car at the bottom of the hill, and there's a couple getting out of the car with a shotgun. He pulls off the side of the road, puts his blinkers on, and he's like, what are you doing? And they go, did you see that bear drag that other bear off? And he doesn't know what to say. He's not going to tell him what he just got through witnessing. A canine the size of a horse that had a tongue the size of a cow that he estimated was, and I quote, around 1,200 pounds.
Wow.
And so he got them back in their car to say, the bears might attack you. You need to leave out of here. So fast forward again, he was at another state at a weigh-in station. Pretty typical. They take him through and they said, hey, you need someone to look at your manifest and just pull in back and someone will be with you in about 30 minutes. He goes, okay, golly, I'm in a hurry, but okay. He pulls out back. He waits. 30 minutes later, a car pulls up. Two guys get out, very large guys, both dressed the same, high and tight, like military. And he's got his manifest ready. He goes, okay, do you want to take a look? I'll unlock the back. And the first thing they say is, nope, we need to take your firearm out of your cab. And he's like, catches him off guard. It's like, what? And he goes, we need to get your firearm out of there. And he goes, well, do you have a warrant? And they said, well, we could get a warrant, or we could just completely tear apart your cab here, or you can just let us get your firearm. And why did you shoot our asset?
Wow. Okay.
So
here we go.
That was the first time I had heard that. And he pulled me aside. This gentleman, Joe, he was at a conference and we'd never met. And he said, Lance, I'm the guy I'm Joe and from Michigan. And I go, oh my gosh, it's so nice to meet you. So we spoke and he told me later what happened. Fast forward again. They took a firearm. They kind of had words. They let him go, didn't tear apart his cab. Later that following year, he was in like Houston helping a mother-in-law or a family member move, entirely different state in the summertime, had the cab of a regular size personal truck locked. They were moving things. He opens the back, and I think it was his girlfriend unlocked unlocked the camper off the back of his truck. And there was a box there, nothing on it. And it looked like a flat screen box. He opened it up and guess what was in there? The gun that was taken in another state by those two guys. So that was pretty much in a fast manner, that story, what happened, but he shot, killed a Dogman, and had his firearm extracted from the truck and was given it back as a message. He called me and he said, what do you think this meant, Lance? I said, well, it was a message. They're still listening. They're still monitoring you and what you say. Because by that time, he had already given his story to other podcast shows. He was mentioned in someone else's book. His full name was given. He served his country, retired service, and very sharp guy, very um, just very keen on things. And so he doesn't back down easy at all. And so it was quite a story that he told me, but it is one that doesn't surprise me based on a multitude of other stories that I have personally talked to eyewitnesses and what has occurred.
What did you make of his use of the word asset?
Well, I thought about that for a long time. And a lot of people know that story of Joe Barger. And a lot of people say, well, they made him in a lab. I told you, Lance, they made him in a lab. And I'm of the mindset of this. We know that word to mean something that you own, property, possessions you own, an asset. I take it still to mean that these creatures are not necessarily made. I'm not 100%, can't prove, but can't disprove it either. But I think they said that because they're heavily involved in studying these creatures. They are very not only aware of them, but they have captured them alive and or deceased. They know their habits, their tendencies, their characteristics, their average weight sizes, their abilities, all those things. And I personally think that they have built special equipment to corral these creatures once they know they're in an area.
Right.
That are very high tech that you or I are not privy to that kind of equipment. But I think that's the way I take it, that they use that term asset is that in so many words, this is what we're studying. We know about them, and you shot one we were looking after to a certain degree.
Tracking,
Yes.
tagging, GPS,
Yes.
collared. Right. And it almost sounds like your typical, if it's typical, Men in Black.
Well, it is, and that is kind of the general term everybody knows, kind of the Will Smith and the Men in Black, and it's a pretty cool show. I like them. But I think, honestly, in my opinion, that's giving him too much credit to give him that title. I like to call him kind of what anyone in the UFO community, UAP community, will know the name of Stephen Greer, Dr. Stephen Greer. And he uses kind of corporate spooks or the black mob. And I really like that terminology because I have people that I have interviewed several times, become friends with actually, in which they have reported their encounter. And I think of one of two cousins that were in Ohio that were attacked midday by a Sasquatch on a reservoir island. And what they took these cousins through to keep them quiet is like made for a movie. They closed bank accounts, savings accounts. Both cousins lost their job. They lost their marriage. They had no home. They lost their home because they couldn't afford to pay any mortgage. And it wasn't their fault what happened. They were at the wrong place at the wrong time. And they encountered a Sasquatch that attacked one of the cousins, punctured a lung, knocked him unconscious. The other cousin took him in by boat, brought him up shore, called every law enforcement officer you can think of in the county. Nobody would take him with an ambulance, so he drove his cousin to the hospital. He was in a hospital room for several days to make sure his lung would reinflate. And during that time, though, when they arrived at the hospital, two people came in that cleared the room of all the officers, the highway patrol, the game rangers, game warden, and everybody, and no one knows who they were. But they separated the cousins. I know this because the cousin talked to me 3 days immediately after this happened. It was still fresh on his mind. He was still in shock. And no one really knows who they were, but they could sure clear out a room full of officers. And these cousins, they just wanted someone to listen to them. And they told them exactly. They spilled their guts. This is what we saw. We saw a massive Sasquatch. It hit my cousin. You guys got to go out there and kill this thing. And in trying to tell the newspaper, the local radio station, they were immediately told to get out of the buildings. No one wanted to talk. They were being prosecuted, so they had to get an attorney, but the attorneys they got called them back and said, "We don't want to be attorneys. Sorry, bye, click." So these people behind the scenes that we were talking here about, the men in black, I call them the corporate mob because they were able to lock the bank account of the cousin I talked to. His wife didn't have access. They couldn't pay any bills. They couldn't buy any food. They lost their home. She didn't understand what was going on. He didn't understand until I kind of helped him connect the dots. That's what I was doing, was helping him connect the dots. Otherwise, he would have never connected what they saw and what was occurring with his bank account. And I felt bad for him. There was so much that went on. There was a police officer that I understand that lost his job because the police officer secretly gave our number to the cousin to say, these guys might help you. Well, that was found out later, and the officer lost his job. But these people have a way to shut the accounts down. You don't know who's doing it, so who can you sue? Who do you tell? You don't know who to tell, who to talk to. So it gets crazy. I mean, it plays out like some Jason Bourne movie, but the problem is that it's real. It did happen. And these people, again, we don't know, but for some reason, I will say that anytime someone has a Dogman encounter or a sighting, just a sighting, these people are Johnny on the spot immediately within hours or a day.
It makes me wonder. It's such a good point. It makes me wonder, especially today, when somebody from an agency, law enforcement, customs, whatever it may be, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just looks you up. What is it that they see? Right? Okay. It's not speeding tickets. Well, that might be there, right? But everything could be there.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
Right. Yeah. It freaks me out. I'll give you an example. This past weekend, I'm clearing customs in Houston. Okay. This on Saturday. And I'm there, passport and all of this, right? And the United States Customs agent, I could almost describe him to you. He's probably 50, I'm going to say 45, 50. Had these wraparound shades, but they were clear. All right. But anyway, I don't know. And he says something to me through the glass. I said, "Excuse me." And he leans down. There's a little hole, right? Square hole. It's this big.
Right.
And he leans down into the hole and goes, "Love your work." I said, "What?" Totally caught me by. I was like, "What?" Now,
wow.
Now he's not a fan. He doesn't. I don't know. But anyway, he hands me my passport and he says, "Welcome back to the United States." And I leave, and I'm walking away. And that's when it hit me. Exactly what you're talking. What is it that he read?
Yeah. I mean, and here's my spidey sense or gut suspicion when it comes to just standard law enforcement, whether it's county, local township, or state police, or state game wardens. I mean, those people do
forest ranger,
whether it's state or national parks. I think those people are fabulous and they do great work. But I will say this, do all of them, and this is just my personal opinion, but I don't believe all of them are privy to knowing that these creatures exist. And it's not something that, when you graduate from the academy, they go, "Oh, by the way, cryptids are real." It's nothing like that. I think it's by happenstance on a call, but I do think in very isolated areas within a county, a parish, a state, a region, there are law enforcement officers, civilians that have backdoor portals, either a number that they say a code or an email, they give a code that these people are on the spot that fast.
Yep.
And I think
I
it's
agree.
it's a small percentage, but I think I'm on spot with that because it is my personal opinion now. Because here's the thing, AI did not just come out last year with these people. They've been using AI for a couple decades, just like the cell phones. And so they have perfected it. How can you hire enough people to listen to police scanners and YouTube shows and podcasts and Apple shows? And you can't. There's too many.
Nope.
So you can have AI do that fast for you with select terms, key phrases, and words.
Yeah, absolutely. YouTube, friggin' Netflix, I don't care. They have been using that for a long time. When you have I'm going to say it, man, it's probably in a month, trillions of phone calls, trillions of text messages, trillions of emails. How many uploads of YouTube videos happen on a daily basis?
Oh my
Those
gosh.
aren't humans listening to that. That's software.
It's
To all
software.
of it, scanning everything, looking for those keywords. And I'll give you another example of this, and especially when it comes to forest rangers who are federal. John Greenwald of the Black Vault, and you can look at this. You can see it for yourself. He's got on his website a page posted from the Forest Ranger Handbook, right? It's a page and a half that talks about Bigfoot and talks about the DNA testing that was done on Bigfoot and that Bigfoot was real. Now, this is in the Federal Forest Ranger Handbook. In the new version of the handbook, those pages are missing. Now,
isn't that interesting?
Yeah. So that was part of the not of the handbook, but the training. And forest rangers have to be aware of this, number one. But number two, they're seeing and experiencing this all forms of nature and wildlife every single day.
Absolutely. And you hit on something that just, certain shows just stick with me. And I remember I interviewed a small town police officer who was off duty, had his firearm with him, as most, small town police officers or officers do off duty. They have their firearm still with them. It's concealed most of the time. And he was taking his elderly father fishing. Well, they go on the Texas side and they fish on the Red River in a very secluded area that the grandfather wanted, or the father wanted to go to. They get there toward the evening. They throw the fishing line in. And about that time, they hear a massive splash across it, just yelling like this incredible, just massive. It's got power yelling, and they hear this splashing like something is coming across the river at them. But it's dark. They can't see anything, but they're scared. The father gets in the truck, starts the truck, and he's a big man, but he's scared. Well, the son is like, what's going on? So he starts gathering up all this equipment and just starts throwing in the back of this little Chevy S10 truck. And he said, I got to see what's going on here. Well, he could feel the tremor. I repeat, he could feel the tremor of this thing clawing up the dirt bank coming after them. And as it gets to the top, it's a massive squat. This Sasquatch gets to the top, pushes itself over, and just lets out this massive roar. Instinctively, this off-duty officer shoots twice. Boom, boom. He sees, it's kind of that twilight time where he could see the splatter, boom, and then it falls. And then he hears, he gets out of there. They speed out of there. This was on a Saturday. Monday, he goes back to his little office there in town, and his commanding officer said, "Hey, before we get started for the day here, I need you to talk to some folks here in the back if you don't mind." Okay.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding.
He goes in the
Yeah.
back. There
Yeah.
is a Texas um, Texas Ranger. There is a Texas Game Ranger, and two people across the table. One's dressed in a suit, black tie, skinny tie, and the other one is in a suit. It looks like he's green. He's new. He's a little taller, but it's in a suit too. He looks a little scared, but he's following the lead of the other guy. They don't say a word. He gets in there. Long story short, the person that spoke the most was the Texas Ranger. Very brash, very in your face. And finally, the Texas game warden takes a chair. He scoots it up to this officer and he says, "Look, we're all law enforcement here. I'm going to be frank with you. We've known about these creatures for years. Some are aggressive, some are not. We advise you not to say anything to anybody, but we've known about them for years and years and years." And so the officer said, "Okay." He said, "Do you want me to take you where that's at?" And then the Texas marshal basically said, Texas Ranger said, "No, don't go. I know where it's at. Don't you ever go to that place again." And again, very brash with his personality. The two guys across the table, he said, just looked like they could drill a hole in him. They were just staring him down. And long story short, he lost his job in a week. Couldn't find work in law enforcement for up to 2 years. Everywhere he went, he just couldn't get a job. And he always felt that that incident was following him until one day he applied at a small town. He didn't tell me which state. He said, the commanding officer said, "You know, I was told not to hire you because of a Bigfoot incident." And he goes, "What?" I knew something was up. I knew it. He said, "But I'm going to hire you because everybody in this town has had their own personal encounter with Sasquatch. So if they know about your story, it's not going to matter." And so that was a really interesting story. I bring that up basically because the Texas Game Ranger and the Texas Ranger both knew and said, "We know about these Sasquatch. We know they're real." And so they just admitted it to this officer.
What's your definition of Dogman?
I've been asked this a lot, and I guess to put it simply, it's kind of like, and I'm probably going to use a movie to explain some of it, but think of a wolf, just a standard wolf in your mind, like you would see at a zoo, and amplify the physical features of that wolf. Make it about 5 to 7 times bigger, therefore 5 to 7 times heavier on average. Make the ears taller and pointed, anywhere from 8 to 10 inches. Make the muzzle larger, the eyes larger. A feature that's not typically found on a wolf that these dogmen tend to have a lot, that people state they see very clearly, and some are up close, around the head and shoulders that have like a mane, like a lion, like an extra layer of hair. The other exaggerated features, a very skinny waist, but the shoulders are massively wide, like that of a man, hence the dog man. The muscularity of the creature is much more beyond a typical wolf or canine. I know that there are some domesticated dogs that are very muscular, and like pit bulls and some other mountain breeds that are very, very muscular, but this is an exaggerated level. I asked this question to a buddy of mine that is kind of on our team. He's not a podcaster, but we go out and we hunt these creatures at night because he's a predator call maker of about 40 years. And he really uses an oscilloscope to overlay frequencies. He called the Dogman in Western Oklahoma in 2013. And I asked him, I did an interview and we kind of hit it off well. We've been friends ever since. And I've asked him a million times, "Dave, what did you see? What did you see?" He said, "Lance, the best thing I can describe was the movie that came out during that time. Watch the movie Van Helsing and take one of those werewolves, paint it black, make the eyes just as yellow, amber yellow you can, and that's what I saw. And that's pretty terrifying. And he was terrified. He admittedly told me, for the first time in 38 years of hunting predators at night, bobcats, mountain lions, coyotes in the thousands, his hands were shaking. And his own words, I didn't have enough gun, Lance. I was scared. This
Right.
thing was massive.
Is it a situation, I mean, through your own research, is it a situation of something supernatural, interdimensional, or is it an undiscovered species, or is it something else altogether?
What a great question. I've been asked this a lot, and I don't even know if I can tangibly isolate it down to just one answer, honestly, because it could be all those. But for me, Lance, I still say that it is something that's been around a long time. It's been in isolated areas or pockets of, whether it's a state, a region, a part of the country, that's had time to reproduce. And I think the government or non-governmental agencies have, I guess you could say, stumbled upon them, but really they know about them. They study them. Those that are accidental, whether intentional or unintentionally shot or meet its demise from a truck hitting one, they've been collecting them and studying them. To me, I think they're something that is, honestly, in my opinion, more biblically based, from Genesis 6:6.
Okay. Let's stay right here.
Because of what you said with the supernatural abilities.
Right. Of course. Are they an apex predator? Do they attack humans?
Well,
Are they vegetarians and don't eat meat? I don't know.
Well, if you look at it, I remember back when I was in school, I was taking this gross anatomy course, and I remember something where we talked about structure and function. If you want to see, you look at something, how it's built, that'll tell you what it eats. It'll tell you what it hunts. We know that eyes in the front hunt, eyes to the side hide. So this creature, the eyes are massive as well as other features. Its ears are pointing forward, but can also articulate. It can find sound. It looks like a predator. It's a canine, but there's a lot of aspects to it, on its intelligence, on its sheer speed, and how it's built, like somewhere between a bodybuilder, a gymnast, and a world-class Olympian athlete, that it's far beyond any current apex predator we're aware of. I mean, it would be the equivalent of like a velociraptor, but canine. And so if you look at how it's built, I would say it is a meat eater. In fact, the call that my buddy made that brought, by the way, that was the first time he used that call. He called it out over a mile away, and he could see it coming in because it was black against the brown kind of landscape. He thought he called in a bear. It was so big. And when it stopped out at 400 yards, it went from 4 legs and started walking around on 2.
That was my next question. So again, we need to stay right here. I find this so interesting.
Sure.
Is the intelligence of that they are avoiding humans? And I mean, there's got to be, well, I don't know. It may be interdimensional, maybe something biblical. It could be something else for sure. But they must have a town. A town. What, I don't know what you would call a pack of dogmen, but you know what I mean?
There's still a pack. The way I look at it, I don't claim to be the all-knowing of Dogman, but I know enough that, based on my buddy who has been a 40-year predator hunter and what he's taught me and what I've learned through, as a kid hunting and being out in the woods and knowing how predators, what they gravitate to. Predators are they're driven by sound and sight. You can fool them with sound. You can never fool them with smell. That's one thing. So most of them are sight driven and sound driven. And so you think sound driven, what are you talking about? You're talking another animal in distress. So another animal that is meat substance.
An injured fish, sharks can hear that.
Yes. And so I even have an account of a guy that had just got through having surgery, abdominal surgery, that was up in the up northern, I think it was of Lake Superior, and he was biking, and he caught himself because he was still having some problems. He was on the trail by himself, and he was groaning. And he said shortly after that, he saw something on the rocks just bounding, coming his way. Well, it was a Dogman creature coming in. So did it hear the sound of this guy groaning?
Right.
That's what we wondered after I got through doing the interview. The guy was scared. I mean, he didn't know what was coming in, bounding on the rocks on two legs. But you're definitely hitting on some great questions. I think this creature, that it's been around for a while. I think that there is, in my mind, there's some biblical aspects to it. And that's the reason why these men in black, they want to subdue this and suppress this information, because I think that anytime, in my opinion, that you can somewhat validate a Christian doctrine, and or this creature has been directly responsible for injury, if not other possible deceased individuals, then you want to keep it quiet. Heaven forbid this information gets out, because how many millions of dollars would be lost in recreation lands, national park entry fees, recreation, hiking, fishing, biking, canoeing, all those things. You're talking billions and billions of dollars.
Yeah. Dogman crossing.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Be aware. But we're up against a break, but really quick, and I'll set this up for our return.
Sure.
This particular Dogman, I would almost call it an attack. Jumps onto the side of a semi truck, sticks his head into the window, but he didn't bite the driver. That's interesting, isn't it?
It is, but you did hit on something extremely important, that there is a level of, they're not afraid of us. They're not afraid
of a semi truck, that's for sure.
No, and that is not the first time that's happened. It's happened many other times, I believe, and I know I've had a handful personally of people contact me that are truck drivers out on the lonely, desolate roads of Nevada, Texas, Michigan, Florida, that they've seen these creatures run up alongside the truck, as well as delivery vans, UPS trucks, and Amazon delivery trucks.
I was just in Peru, and I was watching dogs chase people on motorcycles. Hilarious to see that go down. But it does happen.
It does.
Now, what about, again, we're up against the break. We'll pick this up when we come back.
Sure.
When the Wolfman movies, stories, folklore, mythology that goes back. When we're talking about Dogman, are we also talking about the Wolfman? Is it the same?
I don't think so. I think that it's possible that this creature, they've extrapolated the physicality of this creature into more of a humanistic quality for Hollywood. That's just my opinion. What we're talking about here, a lot of people will say, well, this is a skinwalker, this is that. And the features on it, the skinwalker can look so many different things. And, but really this creature is a creature of its own. Now there's variations in color. There's definitely variations in size. The one thing that I would say that's overall arching that makes this creature very, very scary, aside from its features, is its intelligence. It's not the average intelligence of a canine like we have domestic dogs like Malinois that, are highly trained for police officer use. We're talking way above on intelligence.
There are a lot of four-legged creatures in nature that walk on two legs. Bears, raccoons, squirrels, whatever, right? There's plenty of them. Dogs.
Yes.
But when the reports of Dogman on two legs, is it because it's walking bipedal, or is it just standing up on two legs like other four-legged creatures do?
No, it's...
And what does it have, hands or paws?
Great question. A lot of the times, I would say at least 50% of the time when I'm interviewing someone, because of the daylight, the twilight, because there's brush in the way or high weeds, and or it was running, they really don't get adequate visual of a hand because it was moving too fast, or a foot. I will say that. But when they do describe it, like my buddy Wiley, who was using a military grade scope, it was standing still. It was stationed. It was walking around, but it wasn't running. He looked at it from top to bottom, and he said that it actually did not have paws. It had hands, digits like we do. Wow. And he said if you were to take a raccoon hand times 10 and put on an inch to an inch and a half long black claw on it, that's what it had for its upper hands. Its lower legs still had the reverse dog hawk like a leg.
Okay.
But that its feet did not have digits. It had like a metatarsal pad and toes like a dog. But everything else, like I said, was exaggerated in size and the sheer speed. It was Wiley said it this way. It walked as comfortable, in fact, more so on two legs than it did on four, because it came in on four legs to his sound, stood up, walked around for a little bit, trying to catch the sound again. Well, he's like, I'm not going to call again. That thing is trying to find me.
Right.
But here's the thing. It ran away on two legs faster. He said.
That scares the crap out of me. And then throw in the opposing thumbs like a raccoon.
Yes.
Man, and intelligence. Yeah, that's a pretty scary situation. Lance, you stay right there. Our guest tonight, Lance Hightower, host of Monster 911, is with us tonight. We're talking about Dogman and cryptids all night long. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get your alerts and access to over 2,000 videos. Click that subscribe button right now. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and get the Fade to Black official podcast. 2,000 episodes, all of them commercial free for just $2 a month. Watch Into the Vortex on Gaia TV. It's Fade to Black for the screen. Simple to do. Go to Gaia.com, search Jimmy Church, or click on the link below. Follow Fade to Black on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Get all of the show updates every single day. It's now called X, but who cares? How you doing? Jimmy Church here. Special announcement. Get your Fade to Black t-shirts. That's right. Help support the show. Help support everything that we do over here. We've got 2 t-shirts. We've got 2 ways to get them. Get your Fade to Black t-shirt today. Go Backley Tappy. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and become a Fadernaut. Get a membership. That's right. Everything is commercial free. You have access to downloads, and you get to call yourself a Fadernaut. Jimmy Church Guy TV, Fade to Black, here at Machu Picchu with Brian Forster and Hidden Inca Tours. Amazing tour so far, Brian, but we're here to announce what we're going to do next year in 2026. What's going on?
Okay, November 2026, we're going to have our major tour of Peru and Bolivia, either a pre or post tour of Paracas and Nazca on the coast. And then after that, 6 days in Easter Island.
Bucket list, Easter Island. Come join Brian and I and his amazing team here at Hidden Inca Tours for Peru, Bolivia, and Easter Island. Signing out. Say goodbye, Brian.
Bye, gang.
River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. All right. Welcome back, Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Lance Hightower is with us, host of Monster 911. We're talking about Dogman, cryptids, and all of that stuff. I'm here to get my learn on. Lance, are Dogman solid?
Yes.
You know what I mean? Okay, there's not any reports of them, translucent or see-through or something, or are we talking about?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's, we were talking about earlier about kind of contentious debates going on within the community, and that's kind of one of them. Even with Sasquatch, there is some hard lined groups that believe that this Dogman can vaporize. It can go through walls. And I'm not saying they can't. I'm just saying that I have never seen one do that. I was very fortunate, or I guess you could say unlucky in many ways. My buddy and I, Wiley, we went out one time and did not expect midday. We were just glassing over a point in western Oklahoma. We didn't even have our firearms with us. And we believe what we saw.
Wait, you didn't have your firearms with you?
Well, it's kind of like the way the roads are designed there. You just park off the side of the road, and each road looks the same for miles and miles and miles. So we go through a barbed wire fence, and you got to sneak up high on a knoll, and then you can glass out for hundreds of meters. And so we were just trying to find an ideal place. In fact, we were just coyote hunting that particular weekend. But
and you live in Oklahoma.
Yes. So to get out where we go, in fact, this place is where Wiley had his encounter back in 2013. And so this is a well-known region of the country in the Panhandle, like Cimarron and Beaver County. And it's rolling hills, sagebrush, ravines with cottonwoods. But the landscape looks about the same when it comes to the winter. It's kind of a brown, sagey, rolling sandhills kind of landscape. So we were out there just glassing. We probably walked from the truck not even 20 yards. And when we were looking out to glass at the next point where we wanted to go coyote hunt, we caught the glimpse of 4 of these creatures at about 600 meters. And we believe that's what they were because the bluegrass, the bluegrass that's out on the plains out there, it's about 4 feet high. And we saw a black one that was sitting there, in fact, looking right in our direction. And we saw two that were kind of a reddish brown that were kind of walking around, and one that was kind of a silvery white. And when they were walking, those that were walking around, that blue stem grass that was about 4 feet high, because it was the same where we were at, it was just natural out on the plains, was coming to its underbelly, walking on all fours.
Mhm.
So it was very large. I was still bothered, even being about 600 meters out. But we saw these creatures. That black one never took its eyes off of us. The three walked through the grass over the knoll, and then the black one was the last one. And it kept looking at us, and then it just walked off and went over the knoll. So, yeah, I think these creatures, in my opinion, I mean, what I saw was physical. I didn't see any mist. I didn't see anything disappear. I saw them walk away. Wiley saw the same thing. He saw one run away. I had another gentleman I interviewed. Actually, he was kind of a neighbor as the crow flies. He's only about 5 miles from where I live. And he saw one on the side of the road. And he said he mistook it for a cedar tree. It was that large. And when he took a second glance, he looked at it only about maybe 15, 20 feet away from his car. He could see that its muzzle, because of how large it was at the base and how it came up with its ears pointing and its muzzle down, looking at him as he drove by, it looked like a cedar tree. And when a second glance, he's like, oh my gosh. And then he wanted to keep his eyes on the road. He went down, turned around and came back, and then it was gone. But he told me sitting down, it was well over 6 feet tall.
Were you scared? I mean, 600 meters is close, right?
Yeah,
Okay. Okay. So a track at a high school, that's 440 yards, right? That's a quarter mile. So unwind that into a straight line, dude, that's too close for me.
Yeah. It's one of those things where I've learned from that moment, I'm always going to have my camera with me or something. And that's the thing that a lot of people say, well, if you saw it, how come you didn't get a picture? Well, because my cell phone was in the truck. It was just go through the barbed wire. Let's take we're going to go to the next knoll. Let's just take a look. We're focused on what we were going to do. We're coyote hunting. I didn't think about bringing my camera. I didn't think about bringing a gun. I was just taking my binoculars, and that's what Wiley did. We were going to get back in the truck in 10 minutes. And so I've learned that take the time to do what you need to do. I'll always take my sidearm with me now. I had it, but I just didn't have it on my hip. We just got through taking a break.
Right.
And so that's what happens a lot when people, on the show, they go, well, how come the person didn't get a picture? How come they didn't shoot? Well, I can tell you right now, not everybody is a journalist and has a camera rolling 24/7. And when you see something that you've never seen before, it creates this disconnect from what you know to what you don't know. And that disconnect, this dissonance, you don't remember you brought your cell phone that has a camera or a video. You forget that you've got a gun on your side or a rifle slung over your shoulder. You're just trying to process the psychology. What the heck am I looking at?
And it's usually so fast.
Yes.
I have seen hundreds of UFOs. I have photographed one. Okay. It's just the way that it just happens so fast and so quick. The time that it takes to take out your phone, click on the camera and point it, whatever you're interested in is gone.
Yep.
It's done.
You nailed it on the spot right there. It's like you see it, it's gone.
Right.
And
right.
That's
just the way it is. Back to your sighting. Did they give a crap about you?
No, it's like the other three didn't know we were there. But what was frightening about it was the sheer size that I could see. And the part that was a little frightening was the black one that was upright, and by the time we were looking, my buddy said, "The black one's looking right at us. He sees us." But there was no aggressiveness, obviously. He just was sitting there and looking right in our direction the whole time. Right. Didn't take his eyes off, and he obviously was the alpha. A lot of people don't realize, or some people may, realize that when it comes to the wolves, the natural wild indigenous wolves, the alpha doesn't lead the pack, it follows the pack. And that's what this one did. The other three left, and then this one was there just probably about another 10 seconds or so, 13 seconds, and then got up and then made a U-E and went back and followed the rest.
Have you had a close-up encounter?
Not for me personally. Wiley, like I said, his was out about 400 yards, but the scope he was using was a military grade scope. And so when he moved it he doped it in from 10 to 24 power, it's like you looking at me right now. He could see the eyes, he could see the ears twitching, he could see the saliva coming off the gums. He could see the claws, he could see the neck, the chest, everything. And because it's like you're standing 2 feet at 24 power at 400 yards, it's like you're standing 2 feet from it. I did interview a young man out in the panhandle of Texas some years ago that in this town he lived at, they have a huge cattle industry. In fact, you can smell the town before you come to the town. And he shared an encounter story that was really quite hair-raising. He noticed that there was a lot of people in the neighborhoods putting up, "Where's, lost pet? I can't find Fufu. I can't find my cat. I can't find my dog." All kinds of dogs, mainly little dogs. And he noticed where he lived around the golf course, about the evening time or twilight, there is dogs, they would start this barking, and then it would just keep going down the homes. And it was just this continuous bark that would just last for an hour, and then it would just fade. But this was regular every night, every week. And he thought to himself, being an avid outdoorsman, there's something going on in the back alley or somewhere. There's a predator. There's a predator around. There's too many pets gone, and the dogs go crazy. The big dogs go crazy at a certain time. So him and his buddy got a wild idea. Where would this thing hide? Well, the closest they could find was just on the perimeter of a golf course. The top of the golf course, nice and manicured, but the deep ravines were rugged, untouched, woolly bottoms. So he had an idea. He's going to go in the bottom with a firearm, and his buddy's going to get on top and just start throwing rocks in and just keep working their way down and see if they cause anything to come out. Well, it worked. They got a little ways down. He threw some rocks, and something came up that was dark. He told his buddy on a walkie-talkie, he said, "Something is moving. Just hang on. Don't throw any more." And as it came out, he came almost face to face with this dogman-like creature. It was black in color, yellow eyes. This gentleman said that he was about 5'8" to 5'9" in height, and he was looking eye to eye with this creature only about 15 yards away. He had a gun already on it as it came out of these saplings, and the creature had no idea he was there. The wind was right, and this guy was super silent. And as this creature came out to the clearing, it saw the guy, and he said the look that this creature gave was like, if it could talk, as in his words, he said, it's like, "You got me. You got me." And he said the look in its face, its ears didn't go back like it was getting ready to attack. It's just had that look like, "You got me. You fooled me. Shoot me." But the guy said that after having the gun on it, he just realized it wasn't going to attack. So he lowered the gun. And I said, "What did the creature do?" And he said, "Oh, I was frightened when I saw the size of it because I didn't know what I was looking at." He said it just kind of turned and walked back into the tree line, and he just let it go. But he said this thing was at least 500 to 600 pounds. It was yellow eyes. It was the same height as he was on all fours.
Yellow eyes.
yellow eyes, like it was just beer yellow amber eyes. Just the gaze. He said the eyes were so yellow they were like emeralds. But it
What
had a
about?
lot of,
Let me ask you about footprints. Any footprints? Any castings?
yes, we had one. I've got a casting. It's not the best because it was casted in sand where we go out there in Western Oklahoma and call the sand is like powder. So it doesn't give justice to nice, clear, markated, like it's not like in mud where it's a perfect print, but it was large enough. I went ahead and casted it because the print is still, it's still massive. I mean, my dog, my personal dog here, he's 110 pounds and he can't make anywhere. It's like he would have to have 3 times the size that this cast that we have in the sand. But there's other people that's casted prints and they're massive in size. And even Wiley, during that time in 2013, he had his encounter. He saw a print. It was on a gopher mound. He got out of his truck and he looked down. It was right in the middle of the road. It was a gopher mound. He thought someone was playing a joke on him out at this because he parked near a well pump. He said that it was as big as like a pie plate. And he looked around. He's like, who's trying to yank my chain here? This is, he thought it was a joke, like someone's trying to mess with him. But he said, I realized that was kind of silly because I'm out in the middle of nowhere. But there's been people cast them. I have one that we casted, but I'm always on the lookout for, in Oklahoma, it's just sheer luck to get a great print anywhere. Just because the soil is so different, the terrains are different, and the moisture content, you've got to really look around creek beds where there's mud, things like that, especially after rains, around lakes or ponds. Those are the best places to look, or around kind of a shady, moisture, kind of a sloughie bottom, streams, things like that. That's the best place to look for prints.
What about DNA, hair samples?
Well, there's been some samples. There's a project that has been going on for a while. It had she's a geneticist, Dr. Mel Ketchum. This was some years ago, but I know a gentleman that was involved in that genome project. And apparently, we read some of the studies in that. One of the samples, if not more, I don't recall how many now, was a specimen of a dogman. I don't know, I forget what the specimen was, but there was enough genetic material that they were able to test it. That gets into some interesting findings because the way the findings came out was that there was some canine qualities to it, but then there was some other qualities that I understand, and I wish I knew more of the specifics of that. Again, I'll have to reread that study, that there was aspects of it that wasn't natural, is the way that came out.
Meaning what?
Meaning that the way part of that study said that, and there was testing
Like
Sasquatch samples. Yes,
genetically modified.
Yes, the Sasquatch materials or the specimens they had fell under being more natural, whereas the Dogman, there was parts of it that looked more synthetic or lab designed, if you will.
And I know I'm like sounding like woo-woo. Any communication, any telepathic communication, we can certainly talk to our dogs telepathically, right? That they know what's going on.
Right.
What about that with Dogman?
Well, I haven't heard that, but what you do hear a lot of is what I was saying earlier, is that with a lot of first accounts of eyewitnesses, firsthand accounts, what you have are people saying that, and I mean, I can do name 3 or 4 encounters where people said that when they saw this creature and this creature saw them, they didn't hear any words, but the meaning was very clear based on the way it looked at him, what the intention was, either for the person to do or not do. I had one
intelligence.
Yes,
The creatures are smart.
Yes, one guy had an encounter in Tulsa County in his backyard, neighbors to the side of him and to the back across this water drainage system. So there's homes all in this area. 2 in the morning, there's a ruckus going on with his dog. He turns on the back light, sees something. It looks kind of shadowy. So he goes back and gets a headlamp light, shines it. And what he sees is the back end of this creature. The shoulders, or he said, are massively wide, 4.5 feet wide. It's squatted down, and he's like, what is it squatted down? Well, a couple days before, he put out 30 pounds of stale dog food on the other side of his fence. It was bent down eating this stale dog food. And he's like, what am I looking at? He could just see pointy things coming out, which was the ears. And as it turned broadside to him, he looked at it and saw it was canine. He's like, oh my gosh. And then it did something that I've never heard of. It actually shook its head no. Like, don't do it. Whatever it is, don't do it. And he got scared. And he's like, I'm not going outside. But he said, I distinctively saw it shake its head no.
It would work for me. That would work for me. That would work for me. And that's actually a pretty frightening aspect of this. That
It is.
Definitely sentient, right?
Yes.
And intelligent.
Yes, very.
It makes me wonder if they can sense what a gun is.
Oh, absolutely. I've got numerous. Again, these are people that are really not into this genre. They don't do, cryptid shows. They don't do reading. They don't do podcast shows. But these are people for the first time in a fraction of a second that found out these creatures are real. And they said that a handful of them said when they reached for their firearm or went to get a firearm, this creature, he said, it knew what I had in my hand, and it either shook its head like, don't do it, or its eyes got larger. But in the case in point, as I said earlier, of the truck driver that fired on one, as he was swinging that firearm around, and just before he shot and fired, that creature was looking in, and he said he could see its eyes get big as saucers. It knew it was a gun.
How many do you think? I know this is just hypothetical, but how many are misidentified? Oh, that's a bear. Oh, that's a moose. Oh, that's an elk. That's a buffalo. Because it's dark and it's, just completely misidentified.
I'm going to probably use the Pareto principle here on this one, Jimmy, because it's almost, and I'll just say that because that's a well-known 80-20. I'll say probably 80% are misidentified.
Right.
And just like I think 80% to 90% of the pictures online are just kind of AI now or hoaxes, I think the ones that are real that are shown on YouTube or podcast shows are not as dramatic as what we think. I think, unfortunately, the real dramatic ones that would just raise the hair on the back of our neck never get filmed. It's that split second. They see it, it does this, and it's gone. But I think that a lot of them are misidentified because of how large they are. And people, again, it's too scary to believe the reality of these creatures' existence. So what you do is trying to rationalize the existence of what you know. Oh, that had to be a mangy bear. That's interesting. I didn't think bears got red in Oklahoma. That's interesting. That I didn't know bears run on 2 legs. So people try to justify in order to bring calm and reality back to their world. And so in some people, once they get it tucked away as, okay, it was that, then they just kind of file it and they don't come back to it.
The reason why I ask this is because I did this a lot. I would misidentify, and I would also kind of freak myself out. Let me explain. I spent a lot of time in Northern California and the Pacific Northwest. And when you are up there riding around on these back roads and you see a herd of elk, okay, seeing elk on TV is one thing. Seeing an elk standing on the side of the road and you drive past it and you're looking up and you see the friggin' size of these things, right? They're huge.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a bear a few feet from me with her cubs. It was like 3 cubs walking behind her. I'd never seen anything quite that large. You know, 10, 12 feet long, just crushing through close, feet away from me.
Yeah.
And then, but that's during the day.
Yeah.
At night, this stuff is still around.
Yep.
Right. So now you're driving around. There are no lights. There aren't any, but you see the shadows of wildlife. And you start to freak yourself out. You don't want anything to run in front of your car. That's the first thing. So
Right.
you're aware, but you see this stuff off. You know what I mean? You see.
Oh yeah,
you see
it's like have you ever been up close to a buffalo? There's buffalo.
I have not. I've seen those videos though.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's the same premise. Well, there's a few places in Oklahoma that you can actually go into these refuges that are on reservations and certain special protected lands that you can get up close to a male buffalo, a bull, and the sheer magnitude and size is just breathless how large these creatures are. Well, in the words, getting back to my buddy Wiley regarding the Dogman, he just basically, and someone actually, I just did an interview this past week of a truck driver that saw one in Western Texas, and he used the same words as my buddy Wiley. No one is ready to see this creature. No one is ready. It's so frightening how large it is and how it looks. And if you're seeing it run, your mind is just disconnected. What am I processing? What am I seeing? And
right.
you can't connect the dots fast enough. But
you can't. No, I'm bringing this point up because it means a lot. We are talking about a creature, Dogman, and we're describing the size of it. And to most people, they're like blown away. Well, no, there is stuff in nature that big. And until you see it for yourself, you can't process it.
No.
You don't understand how big a moose is, an elk, a grizzly bear, a buffalo. You can't until you see it for the first. You know what blew my mind? I'll give you an example. The first time I saw a bald eagle up close.
Oh, yeah.
I had no idea. Shoulder to shoulder. Here, I'm going to switch cameras. Shoulder to shoulder. An eagle's shoulders are like that wide. And until you see a bald eagle and its claws are bigger than your hands.
Yeah.
Right?
They're massive.
They're massive. And that's just nature in general.
Yep.
So when we're talking about something like the Dogman and its size, well, there's a lot out there like that. And you could easily misidentify it, especially in the dark.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the dissonance that people are misidentifying because they're seeing something so large. They're like, okay, in Oklahoma, we only have so many things that get that large. And so they'll say, is it a calf? No. What's a calf? A calf can't run like that on 2 legs. It's a horse. I had someone this past week say, what's a horse running on 2 legs? No, wait a minute. Horses don't do that on 2 legs. And so again, they're running through this file of what they remember or their file memory bank of what they know. So when they see what they don't know, it's just this, what am I looking at? So therefore, during that time, there's no pictures, there's no video. They forget what they're doing, and then it's gone. So
and apex predators, and I would say, I'm not some Nat Geo naturist out there shooting videos. I'm not any of that. I'm some expert, but I have been out in nature and I've seen some stuff. Mm-hmm. And when I see an apex predator look at me, they don't give a crap because they know they can kick my ass.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's an attitude there. I can't really Explain it. I was just up in Wisconsin,
Mm.
and a bald eagle came in and landed in this tree above us. And I was with some friends. I was with Chris Bledsoe and his family. We're out there. This bird, magnificent, by the way, is just yards from us in the tree. Okay. Looking at us like this.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
No. And so there is that attitude there. If they want to hurt you, they can.
Yeah.
But they're an apex predator. They're not threatened by anything, and they're not really threatened by us. And I
No.
just find that part compelling with your sighting specifically. Nothing attacked you because they
No.
don't really give a crap.
No, I was nervous, and Wiley started getting nervous again. But here's the thing that takes I wasn't like panicked, because I would rather be I'm mentally prepared for seeing it if I ever saw it. So it's better to be prepared rather than panic. So I've rehearsed numerous times, and with Wiley, I've asked him so many different questions over the years of his encounter that we have special firearms, we have special custom ammo. We're well aware of that. When we use his call, it's time to stay alert. And the whole goal there isn't to go out and take one out. The whole goal is to capture one on footage, because it's so rare, very rare, to get one on video, whether it be kind of thermal or daytime. But that is my goal, is to get that. And you asked something earlier about if it's afraid of us. And based on a lot of the interviews that I've done, and including Wiley's, I think it ran from Wiley because it smelled him. It never saw him. It smelled him. But out of the numerous interviews, I don't see that they were frightened a lot of the times. They were coming into a truck or a car. They stared down. They didn't leave like a typical predator, like a coyote. If you come up on a coyote and it's roadkill and you drive over a hill, they'll just, boom, they're gone. They'll leave. Bobcats are kind of the same way. Now, mountain lions are a little bit different ducks, so to speak. You got to be careful about them because they're a little bit bigger, and they know they're a little bit bigger compared to you. So they might come in after you. But for the most part, predators in general will leave. This creature doesn't seem, most of the encounters, to really care whether you're there or not.
You mentioned earlier, I want to circle back. You mentioned biblical. Why?
Well, if you look at scripture in Genesis, where it talks about the beast of the earth, and Nephilim, which has been spoken of many, many times on podcast shows, they talk about supernatural abilities of these fallen angels. And when we hear the word angel, we think angelic and beauty, and just amazing beauty in and of itself. But when I hear that, I think of a fallen angel, something that's not angelic, something that's beastly. And I think of, when you read supernatural, that is a term that you see or you hear of many times by eyewitnesses. It had supernatural speed. I've never seen anything in my life run that fast on two legs. I've never seen anything jump that high. I've never seen anything over and over look that way. Again, you use this word supernatural, comes up many times by eyewitnesses. And so I believe personally that the Bible doesn't give all the answers, but it hits on some what's been here a long time. It doesn't have Sasquatch in the Bible, of course, or Dogman or Rake or Mothman, those creatures, but I believe that there are beasts that were trying to corrupt the seed of Christ, and that they were given abilities, and angels are given supernatural abilities, even the bad ones. So that's just my personal opinion. That's how I can categorize it. And that's where a lot of people are, but some people are not that belief, and that's okay. We're all trying to figure it out. But the bottom line is, when we get into some of these, we go to a conference, I just say, let's just agree to disagree. And what we do know is that they're here. People are seeing them of all walks of life in different terrains, different states, and they're scary, but they're here.
Are you religious?
Yeah, I'm a man of faith.
You're a man of faith?
Yes.
I'm only bringing that up. I'm spiritual. I was baptized something when I was a kid, but I find the Bible's descriptions very, very interesting. And I've always felt that it's all based on fact. Maybe turned into metaphor at some point for some reason. Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
But based on fact, that's and is it like a strange depiction of what we would define as science fiction today?
Sure.
What is an angel? Is an angel ET? I don't know. Is the description of heaven, is that just the universe and they use the word heaven and it's been twisted around to these different things? I don't know. But
Yeah,
I think that it's a historical reference.
Yeah, I think that there's some, and again, this is just Lance's version of how I can process and file away, so I can, because it'll drive you crazy trying to, the human mind is designed to find solutions and answers, period. And when we don't, we'll just keep going and going and going and going. But in order for me not to drive myself crazy and so I could sleep at night, I think that scripture is designed in such a way that doesn't have to explain everything. I think that there's aspects of scripture that we're just not ready to understand yet. Maybe someday we'll know. But I think that what I do know is that I feel that there's some biblical association. I don't know how or exactly where, but I think that these creatures, with the abilities they have, it just blows my mind that, people will use the word again, supernatural. And I think that these creatures.
Okay. I love where this is going. So just let me ask, I'm here to learn. Okay. So just teach me something. So was the purpose, the job of the Dogman, were they like guarding the gates of Hades?
Oh, great question.
What were their purpose?
Well, that's another great question. Because I've asked this myself. Where we live in the country, I hate wasp. I just despise wasps, but I know they're pollinators. But I get stung multiple times every summer, and I'll be on the porch and I'll talk to my wife and I'll say, why did God design wasp? What's their purpose? What's their purpose?
Right. You got
I hate them. So I ask the same thing when it comes to these Dogmen. What is the purpose of putting an apex predator that if you put a man with no firearm, no knife up against this predator, I can tell you who's going to win. It's the predator. Mm-hmm. And man is considered somewhat a predator too, right? Eyes in front, hunt. And so man has always been that. That's how we've survived. But that's a great question. What is their purpose? Well, obviously it's to thrive. It appears that they are multiplying. There's more and more. People could say, well, are they multiplying, or is it just people reporting it more? We have internet, we got podcasts. And I'm going to say, well, yeah, I agree with that. But it sure appears that they have been able to populate very well in wherever they go. And their sightings are all over. I mean, Oklahoma just within my little locale, within, say, I don't know, 10 miles, 15 miles, I have, um, and these are the people that's just call me. Who knows how many haven't called me? We'll never know that, of course. But I have had from 2016 to present, maybe about 20, 22 sightings to date since 2016.
Wow.
And that's only a 15.
Why Oklahoma? Oh, so I'm out riding my Harley. I'll just make this really quick. 6 months ago, and I've got my light. I have many riding jackets, but I had this light summer breathe through jacket on. Right, it's a Harley jacket, but it's real thin. Right, riding, and this frigging wasp lands right on the inside of my elbow. So my arm is so I'm riding, and it lands right here on the inside of my jacket, and I feel it right like land on me. So I look down, and this dude was stinging me multiple times through the jacket. His tail was going doot doot doot. I was doing 60 miles an hour watching this guy with his tail whack 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 whack, and I brushed, and it hurt obviously, and I brushed him off. Thought, why'd you do that to me? And it was vicious.
In the meantime, the highway patrol officer is behind you.
What's that?
In the meantime, the highway patrol officer is watching you swerve across the highway.
Yeah. No kidding. No kidding. So yeah, that's when you seriously, that's when you go biblical. God, what's the purpose of this?
Right. Exactly.
I didn't do anything. But the stories of, I meant to, let's stay on the biblical side.
Sure.
The blues songs and the folklore, hellhound on my trail, right? These stories, they must be talking about Dogman. Well, and also, and staying on this, hellhound on my trail, the reports of legless Dogman.
Legless.
Yeah.
I've not heard of that, but
okay. I'm gonna share this with you.
Yeah.
Really quick. I just want your reaction.
Okay.
This is near Skinwalker Ranch.
Okay.
And I had this person on my show. Oh, it was probably 10 years ago, that lived not too far from Skinwalker, and who met another friend of mine that was up there doing some research, and gets him on the show. So I'm talking to him. He has a house, and he said, terrifying, by the way, that they had a legless Dogman living in the barn behind their house.
Wow.
Yep. And he said sometimes they would pull up at night in the family car, and the creature was hanging out in front of their house, and they would run back. But he said it didn't have legs, red eyes. Jeez. But just this giant dog creature, and it lived in the back of their property. And I always found that really, really, the matter of fact, the way that the story was told to me, they just dealt with it.
That would be terrifying.
Yeah.
That would be terrifying, having no legs like that. I mean, that would be, just the full body of one, let alone seeing something that has no legs like that. That would be really terrifying.
Almost an entity, described like an entity. Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder too about what you said, how many of what we've seen in the past, when people talk about werewolves and things, were they really seeing a Dogman creature? I think it's very, very possible. Very possible. How far back they go, no one really knows, but we do know that before, and I don't know who coined the term Dogman. I really don't. I know it was really kind of hot and heavy with that term about, it came on the scene maybe about 15 years ago.
Sounds
Maybe,
about right. Yeah.
and then it really started. But before that, it's almost like even Sasquatch, before Sasquatch and Bigfoot became this common term. Prior to that, there was many. I mean, in Oklahoma, there was the El Reno Chicken Man, and in various places. I did an interview with an older gentleman who his dad worked for the logging company at Weyerhaeuser down in southeast Oklahoma, and this was before there was any paved roads back in that day. But they called them boogers, Sasquatch. They were boogers, and it was such a commonality in seeing them cross these logging roads that the dad told the son that the truck logging supervisor would call the new guys up before they went out, and he said, "Now, when you see a booger, don't hit it. Just leave them alone. Let them be, and you leave it alone, it'll leave you alone." I mean, it was such a common thing, and I asked this gentleman how often would his dad see them, and he said, 2-3 times a week. He used to like to go down to a part of the creek, and he'd watch him trying to fish, getting their hand dug into the water and grab for fish. And I said, "What?" He said, "Oh yeah, it was people would watch him, and they called them boogers, but they went by different names. That was a kind of a southern name, Chicken Man, Wild Man, Ape Man. I didn't much hear. I saw a couple times Wood Ape. But mainly boogers is kind of in fact, these vapor lights at night, these security lights, some people call them booger lights.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
On the perimeter.
Yeah.
Let me ask you before we run out of time. So many, I've seen this myself. Okay. So many reports of cryptid Bigfoot, cryptid prints that start and stop. Where it appears that something was interdimensional, came into our reality, went physical, left physical trace evidence, and then disappears. Same thing with any reports of Dogman like that?
Yes. I've had that happen. But
you've had that happen.
Well, not me personally. I've interviewed people that have been on tracks like that, and just for no reason, there's no surrounding trees where something could jump on a tree or cross a log for the tracks to disappear. And I've had hunters, mainly I've interviewed, that they've sent me pictures and the tracks just stopped. When I started hearing this from eyewitnesses, I thought first like, oh, well, they're not really looking fully around in that area. There could be a log that it jumped on or a tree and went to the trees and then we got back on the ground. But I started hearing this more and more and seeing people that are pretty legit outdoorsmen and women that know the woods. They're pretty wood savvy. And they're like, "Yeah, no, Lance, the tracks just stopped. And so I'm of the belief now that there's something going on, just what you said, either a level of something interdimensional, which gets back in some ways, if you want, to this whole fallen angel, aspect. But there's something going on very strange with that. There's too many credible people that will describe something just flat out disappearing before their eyes, and or hunters tracking something very large, and they'll show me prints, very huge canine prints, and they just disappear.
Yeah.
So
for a hunter that's out there tracking, and let's say it's a deer or something, they're going to track. If the deer prints, the hoof prints, right, in the mud just stopped, they would, what? And, look around, where'd it go?
Right.
Well, they would be perplexed and confused. It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So these deers are jumping through portals, right? They're teleporting somewhere. Well, the reports of cryptids doing this, I've seen it myself. I have seen the footprints start. I say footprints. Well, I guess they are footprints.
Yeah.
You see them start and stop, and you step back and it's like, well, wait a minute. That doesn't make any sense. I don't have an explanation for it.
And I really don't either. I mean, that's a part that I'm still learning, just what we talked about before the start of the show. I'm open-minded more than ever. I think with the podcast that I've learned, don't be closed-minded, be open-minded, because as my buddy Wiley would say, don't judge someone's story just because you weren't there.
Right.
And because it sounds very, very bizarre, strange, something you've never heard before, be very careful not to judge their story because you weren't there. How do you know it did not happen? And so in remaining that way, I've become more open-minded than ever before, that there's just things so mysterious on this planet that I don't have an answer yet, but I'm searching, I'm looking, and I'm willing to learn, just like you were talking about as well.
A couple of things really quick before we say goodnight. By the way, perfect conversation. You're working on a book?
I am. It's my first book. And basically the book came about after the two cousins I spoke of earlier in the show. It hit me like a lightning bolt that I need to have a book. You know, my nature, being my background's in healthcare, is to help people. And I feel that I'm still helping people. And when I was talking to this cousin, we stayed in communication every day for weeks. And about day 2, it hit me like a lightning bolt. You need to write a book to help people connect the dots. That's my gift. I can connect dots very fast over patterns. And so the book is basically helping people, guide them through. It's a collection of stories from interviews that I've done, but those are peppered in. Basically, if someone accidentally shoots a creature, what do you do? If you see a creature and it causes damage to your property, who do you call? Who do you not call? If you encounter one, if prints, what's the best way to, if you want to cast prints? Do you tell law enforcement officers or not? So basically it's kind of a
guidebook,
a comprehensive guidebook, whether you've never had an encounter or you've had several.
And where can everybody listen to your podcast, and how often do you publish?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's right now, I'm just kind of in the regrowth of the show. Kind of started back last 2024 December. I post a show about every 2 weeks, and they can get on YouTube. It's Monster 911. I'm on Instagram, Monster 911 podcast host. And I'm rebuilding the website as well. So that's kind of under construction right now. And then on Facebook, it's Monster 911. And again, I post about every other week. And I've got a collection of some of the most very, very interesting. It's more than just Sasquatch and Dogman. I've got alien creatures to rakes and things. I don't even have a name for some of these creatures that people are seeing.
Thank you so much, Lance. Great conversation tonight, and I look forward to our next one. And I do want everybody, we've got Lance's links up in our chat, but certainly in the description below over on our website and throughout social media. Lance, thank you so much, man. Perfect
Thank you
show.
so much. I appreciate you. It's been a pleasure.
Keep doing what you're doing, my man.
You do the same. Thanks so much, brother.
Thank you. Lance Hightower, Monster 911. Again, we have the links up in the chat, in the description below, over on our website and throughout social media. And what am I doing tomorrow night? Let's see. Hold on. Let's find out. What? It seems like I do this every single night. Tomorrow night, Eric Wargo is with us. We're going to be talking about precog, time travel, and UFOs. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. For now, all I've got is Go Back Lee Tappy. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Special thanks to Bill, John, Dex, Jessica, Dennis, and Kevin. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music by Doug Aldrich. Intros Space Boy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2024 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Go back, Lee Tappy.